Welcome to our webinar together with International Airport Review. Today the topic of my talk will be about reinventing airport ancillary revenues in a post-COVID era, especially with a digital collaboration mindset. And the message of today is what got us here won't get us there. So very briefly about AOE, we've been focusing the last few years on trying to help the aviation industry become less dependent on flying revenues and build their ancillary revenue streams digitally, especially around retailing, and have been doing a lot of successful projects with airports and airlines around the world. And before COVID hit, our platforms were used by 225 million people, and we were generating more than $500 million revenue for our customers in 2019. Of course, COVID has hit us, like everyone in the industry, very strongly. But at the same time, we see this impact on the industry as a strong wake-up call to stop thinking with the same mindset that used to exist, the siloed thinking mindset, the monopolized mindset that we had pre-COVID. And this is what I want to talk a little bit about today in this webinar. Maybe to set the scene, to look at three different aspects. What is the good? and the good is very clearly that pre-COVID we had continuous passenger growth. Of course, we are far from any numbers that we saw in 2019, and as we all know from the press and from IATA, we will probably not see the same numbers before 2024, 2023 if things go well. But the reality is it can only get better from now. So that's, of course, a positive news. On the other hand, with a lot lower numbers, total numbers, of course, the necessity to increase spend per pax, which is frankly something that we have become complacent to some extent in the industry, because actually the growth in passenger number has compensated for drops in spend per pax over the last years. This complacency is no longer feasible because we now need to do more with less. And the bad in all of this, of course, is that lack of investment in digitalization and also the core ecosystem, the base ecosystem for digital sales along the customer journey has been extremely low over the years. Many airports have done way too little. Only some very shining examples have truly invested in direct-to-consumer engagement tactics and in being able to sell products and services to their passengers in a meaningful way. And so this significant underinvestment is going to hurt this recovery a lot. And although, of course, investment is now very difficult, it is now more important than ever. Which brings me also to the ugly, which is, of course, that this falling spend per pax and drop in conversions will make recovery much more difficult over the next years. And of course, the COVID impact will still be felt for quite some time. Immediately through less revenues, PAX numbers, as I said, fears of infection will keep people from traveling. But also longer term, there is a general tendency to lower business travel. You know, some expectations, including last week from Bill Gates, are that there will be 50% less business travel. Hopefully it will not be that extreme. But of course, this has a major impact on the ecosystem. On the other hand, I believe strongly that leisure travel will bounce back extremely fast because everyone wants to get out and everyone wants to recover a lost year, essentially, when it comes to holidays. Nevertheless, the complexity of handling the let's call it post-vaccination era, with having to prove that you've been vaccinated or tested, with increased sanitation still going on, etc., has and will cause additional fear and disconnect with the channel of buying at airports. And so these are all things to keep in mind. And for us, the clear message here is we need to try to get the purchasing behavior of passengers to happen outside of their limited time at the airport, because that limited time at the airport will be more driven by worries and stress than by experience in the foreseeable future. So we need to find ways to move that experience more forward in that journey. Now, if we're looking at all of the non-aviation revenues that have been very crucial to airports in the past, of course, parking comes to mind first for many airports in metropolitan areas. And frankly, parking revenues will, of course, have a very hard time to recover. It's obvious that with less traffic, there will also be less demand for parking. On the other hand, though, they might never recover to the levels that they have been in, because, of course, the problem is that at the same time as we are trying a recovery in the aviation industry, autonomous vehicles are pushing forward, ride-sharing companies are pushing forward, etc. So all of this impact that we have already seen on parking revenues pre-COVID will actually have caused a significant delay now. And what that means is that it's probably unlikely that investments in parking infrastructure will still be profitable if they go live in 5 or 6 years. So that has definitely changed this approach of how to use the real estate at the airport going forward. Now, if we're looking at another important, but definitely not one of the biggest revenue drivers for airports, advertising. Of course, this will also be significantly depressed over the next coming years. Why? Because brands want exposure, and it is now much easier to get digital exposure than physical exposure. And with only half of the passengers traveling through an airport, brands will be, of course, less likely to spend and invest majorly in that channel. So this will cause significant drops in revenues from advertising and needs to be compensated. What is the only way to compensate it? Through digital means, through digital advertising and through e-commerce partnerships with brands that you can purchase digitally from your airport. A little bit of a silver lining is food and beverage. Food and beverage will certainly recover first. We've already seen multiple airports around the world, especially in the Americas, who have been seeing substantial income from F&B, sometimes even higher than retail or close to retail. And of course, F&B will bounce back faster, especially in the leisure areas and in the grab-and-go areas, especially given that many airlines are reducing their in-flight catering now. Even big groups like Lufthansa are stopping free food on the short and mid-haul, and so therefore food and beverage will recover first. So that is definitely one silver lining in all of this. But travel retail will likely not be the same before either. We're seeing some major shifts politically, where what we're seeing in the UK is a total disaster that will hurt the aviation industry of the UK for the foreseeable future. But of course also something has changed really fundamentally in how people shop in this period of lockdown, global, sitting at home, looking for digital ways to get the products you need, and having, frankly, a lot more time on your hands than before. And so I strongly believe that travel retail will not recover to previous levels if it doesn't become more of an omni-channel model. What we see as the post-COVID opportunity in all of that is that, of course, we now need to wait. We cannot wait for pent-up demand to return. Hope is not a sufficient strategy, so to say. And currently there's no romance in travel left. So it's much more about certainty and uncertainty and stress. And if we want to get back to this level of attraction, engagement, and excitement, we need to start finding ways to get to the customers before they're traveling, to give them, more of a direct relationship, and to also assist them in their needs much more digitally than physically, because this is, of course, has been a trend before COVID, but it has just been accelerated now significantly. And so as an airport, of course, that now means prioritizing. And of course, we totally understand that the first priority is to make people feel safe at the airport. And this is what most airports have been occupying themselves with the last 6 months. But the next aspect now is, how can I get more out of each passenger going through this airport in order to actually get back to a sustainable basis of paying off all of these infrastructure investments that airports have made over the last 10 years, which, as we know, are in the hundreds of billions of dollars globally. How will the behavior change post-COVID? Of course, some of this is looking in a glass bowl, and we're far from saying this is exactly what's going to happen. But research gives us some indication, and a study conducted this year by Mindset has shown that 65% of travelers have said they will change their habits to how they used to act at an airport pre-COVID. And in fact, 91% said they will spend more time entertained with their mobile device or tablet or laptop. Of course, this has a significant impact on shopping, on F&B, and on advertising revenue. They will also avoid contact with other passengers. They will try to isolate from the crowds. They will not like to queue in shops if they're already queuing, much more in security, keeping social distance, etc. And the most hurtful part of it for airport retailing is that 44% has said that they will spend less time shopping. 44% could mean the difference between $500 million in revenue for the airport and only $250 million in revenue for the airport. So this, of course, is a significant impact. And frankly, while we had conversations last year where airports were telling us, well, e-commerce seems like a nice to have for us because our revenues are stable and strong, this is no longer the case now. You need to diversify in order to protect what you still have left, very, very frankly. And what has happened on a psychological and macroeconomical level is that COVID has caused the adoption of e-commerce to be accelerated by what usually would have taken 5 to 10 years based on the trajectory that e-commerce was on over the last few years in just a period of 4 months. This is, of course, crazy. And of course, the critics might say, no, yeah, of course, everyone was, shopping online because they couldn't get out of the house. But the fact is that, yes, that happened. But what also happened is that generations that have so far never shopped online had to learn how to shop online. And their children and their grandchildren had to teach them how to shop online. And this has created an impact that no one would have expected, because everyone expected that these generations would still be going into retail stores in the future and not convert into online shoppers. And the online shopping trend was mainly driven by, sub 40-year-olds and millennials. This has a significant impact on global society and shopping, and this is something that airports can no longer, stay away from this trend. Now, of course, very often we get asked, where do we start as an airport? This all seems complex, scary, and difficult. How do we even start becoming, changing from a B2B organization to a B2C organization? And frankly, I would categorize what should be done in 2 different areas. One is that there are some things that you must do alone as an airport, both from a structural, organizational, and also investment point of view. The first thing is a mindset question. Stop thinking like a landlord. Stop thinking that it's the retailer's problem to sell products. Stop thinking that all you need to do is collect rent. This mindset will not help you over the next years to recover to healthy levels of shopping again. You need to start thinking like a customer experience company, off and online. And only through that are you able to actually make the airport visit an experience that makes people interested in buying products from you. And this has many, many facets. And of course, it's not just about convenience. It's not just about product selection. It's not just about price, which is of course still important, but it is also about how you treat your visitors, the passengers going through your airport, and how you present yourself as a brand essentially to the airport, to the passengers. And there are many airports that have done fantastic jobs at doing that. Changi, Heathrow, to name a few, that truly have become B2C organizations much more than B2B organizations. Of course, one of the biggest worry of airports in the last years was capacity. So billions and billions of dollars went into concrete. And frankly, a lot of that concrete was invested in order to have space for stores. But space for stores in concrete are a lot more expensive than digital space for products that you're selling digitally to your passengers. And so this strong push to invest in, frankly, what airports are used to, which is investing in infrastructure and concrete, will have to be reduced. And if you're reducing a $10 billion investment in concrete by 10% and using only 1% of that to invest in digital, this will be an investment very well spent. And so in essence, what airports need to invest in is to create a digital foundation. And I'm calling it a foundation because it doesn't mean that the airport has to invest in becoming a full e-commerce retailer or a direct-to-consumer organization. But initially, the digital foundation is necessary. And the foundation for customer acquisition, customer retention, and digital sales to the customers. That is the foundation, and that entails a couple of things, such as creating customer profiles, creating marketing channels, creating the ability to communicate and do campaigns to passengers pre-flight, post-flight, collect the data in a centralized system from parking, from retail, from promotions, etc., where you can collect customer data, from airlines if you can collaborate with airlines, and so on. This is really the foundation. The second part is that as an airport, it is also your role to create partnerships with luxury brands, whether that is online, brands that already sell online, whether it is downtown, brands that you don't have at the airport, but you have downtown in your city, that are very interested in collaborating with airports and airlines, or at the airport. But this work of creating the right kind of product offering and right kind of product mix is your role as the airport, and it cannot be outsourced, because you need to define what you want the value proposition to be to your customers. And lastly, it is about thinking outside of the box and thinking more in regards to customer experience, and as a logistics company that is able to provide products and services to companies along their journey, digitally and physically. So that again is more of a mindset. But then, of course, there are a lot of things, and those are really the things that can drive this business forward, that work better together. And here I want to talk a little bit about a concept that we have come up with a few years ago that we call the quaternity of travel retail. And there has been talk of Trinity and partnerships in the past, but these partnerships have never really created this kind of paradigm shift that we need, a paradigm shift from competition to collaboration, where it's no longer about protecting your silos and protecting your revenue streams and keeping exclusivity, but it is actually about growing the pie together, because each of the players in this quaternity can bring a very unique aspect to the table, frankly. Airports have the infrastructure, the retailer relationships, the passengers walking through it, the Wi-Fi network, the ability to communicate physically and digitally, etc. But what they don't have typically is the customer data. This is where the airlines come in. The airlines have the customer data. They can do pre-trip marketing, post-trip marketing. They can market during their flight. But they don't have the infrastructure to sell everything that they might want to sell. So of course, the collaboration between the airport and the airline becomes crucial. And very often we get asked, they never wanted to collaborate. Why should they now? It's a very good question, and we have also been pulling our hair out over this for many years. However, there are a couple of things that have changed since COVID, but also started to change beforehand. Number one, many airlines have decided they will no longer do in-flight retailing, and they have decided that they need to reinvent this model. And there are two ways of reinventing this model. One is, and I will talk a bit about this in a few minutes, is what we have done together with Singapore Airlines to really become a e-commerce airline retailer in a really meaningful way, with significant investment in customer experience, product range, to really become a brand. But not every airline will do that. Many other airlines will simply choose to find ways to capitalize on their customer data more, whether it's their loyalty data or their flight data, or whatever they know about their passengers, and to rather use this data to generate sales for others. And those are the airlines that for airports are now becoming the crucial partners to work with, because they will no longer see the airport retail as a competition, because they see it now as a way to capitalize their data rather than competition. So this is crucial. And of course, not to forget, the retailers and the brands play a very important part in that quaternity. The retailers are, of course, the ones that have the product, and product access is, of course, key. You cannot sell anything without having access to the products where you need them. But the brands play a very crucial role as well, because in the past, they were kind of in the background, and they were paying retailers to promote them in the stores and so on. But brands want to do a lot more than that nowadays. And we have been contacted by so many brands that want to create much more meaningful customer engagements digitally, because they feel that they're failing to do that physically at the airport. And they're failing to do that because retailers have too many brands to work with, and they cannot do promotions for every brand, and they cannot work with every brand to the same extent. And of course, pop-ups and activations at airports only work when there's a lot of traffic at the airport, and they also don't work in all circumstances. So there's a very keen interest by brands to do more integrated promotions. And we've done several very successful examples, for example, with La Prairie in Frankfurt, where it was truly an omnichannel approach. It's between the e-commerce platform, between the marketing campaigns of the brand, and the actual physical pop-up installment at the airport. And these kind of activations are actually very, very successful and can drive this partnership forward even more. I've alluded to it now a couple of times. What is really becoming crucial are data partnerships with airlines, because without them, it is becoming very, very difficult to actually target your customers pre-flight. And of course, we have been through it. We know the challenges. We know that, with customers where we are live, like Heathrow or Frankfurt, you need to build the customer data first if you don't have access to customer data through the airline. And building customer data takes years, whereas a partnership with an airline can give you access to millions, 30, 40, 50 million people that are in a loyalty program, for example, of an airline, and that can accelerate your success significantly, of course. So these partnerships are key, and I would really, really recommend to every airport CCO or CEO to start these kind of discussions on a top level with the airlines at your hub airports. And if you work together with airlines, you can then actually do what has been challenging in the past, to make shopping and of services and products at the airport part of a seamless experience with the airline, with the booking flow, with whatever channels you actually use, because these products and services, similar to what the airline industry has done with NDC, can now be integrated in different channels, and it no longer requires customers to come to the airport website or use the airport app, which no one uses, to be frank. It is very important to get yourself in a position that others can sell for you, in the same way that most airlines don't sell their tickets themselves anymore. And Google is pushing into selling tickets more and more, and some airlines only sell 10% of their tickets themselves. So in a similar fashion, you need to also be able to put yourself in a position for others, for traffic acquirers, for OTAs, for airlines to sell your retail products and your services of the airport on your behalf. And of course, what that means is also something very critical, which is that you have to start paying for traffic. This is something that is very uncommon for an airport, and it is definitely a mindset change. But digital traffic does not come for free, and so it is crucial to start paying for that. I want to give you a very quick view into how airlines have already started approaching this challenge, and to show you that it really works, because a lot of you are still wondering, how much impact can I really make? And so I want to say a few words about how we managed to transform Singapore Airlines KrisShop, which is their travel retail program, from a majorly in-flight based retail program with very little pre-order and home delivery. Only about 10% was the home delivery and pre-order volume before we started on this endeavor, into an almost fully e-commerce driven enterprise within a period of just 9 to 12 months essentially. And of course COVID has also done their part to accelerate that now, where there are very few planes flying, but I will show you some KPIs that are truly impressive. And so what Singapore Airlines Chris Shop has really done is to create a new benchmark in how you can retail and sell products as an airline, from a multitude of categories, from a much more premium aspect, far from the really frankly boring 200 SKUs of products that you can buy from a cart in a very unpremium kind of setting, wrapped in plastic foil, etc. Which is of course why many brands have also disconnected with that pure selling from the cart channel and have no longer want to be sold like that. To give you an idea of some of those KPIs after 12 months is, the model is now 90% an e-commerce model. Pre-COVID, it was almost 50-50. Now it is 90% e-commerce. And before the critics say, yeah, of course, it's 90% now because there's no more in-flight. No, it is actually 90% of the volume that in-flight ever was. So this clearly shows that it has the capability to replace a significant and actually more than what was feasible in in-flight through e-commerce. And this is only the beginning of a strong growth trajectory. The revenue in 12 months has increased by 500%, something that, of course, many airports could only dream of at the moment. And the conversion, digital conversion, for example, from an email promotion to an actual sale has increased from under 1% to a 3% average and over 7% when you're doing specific promotions. And so these are conversion rates that are, of course, significant. The product assortment has actually grown from around 600 products, so Singapore Airlines was already more diverse than pretty much any other airline in the world, maybe apart from Lufthansa. They have grown that to 30,000 SKUs, which of course now can compete with many product assortments of airports, which is really significant. And it shows you how with a digital mindset, you don't actually need the same kind of concrete infrastructure that you need to sell that kind of volume physically. The basket value has more than doubled in the same period, and also the pre-order cutoff time has been reduced from 3 days, which frankly kills most of the conversions because most people check in about 24 or 48 hours before their flight, and this is the best time to trigger them for a retail purchase, to only 60 minutes for at least 1,000 products and a few hours for the majority of products. And so, this has of course had a major impact on the ability to convert also. Now, what I want to underline a little bit more is what it means to move from competition to collaboration. And of course, part of that is to really focus on building a single customer view. And this is really where we can help and where we have enabled airports to really understand better how to collect the right data, what data is actually valuable, because not all data is valuable. Having passport information on passengers does not help you. If you don't have a way to communicate to your passengers, it does not help you to drive sales. So building the right kind of data set and collecting the right kind of data and then actually making the right learnings, both human and machine-based, is of course crucial in building that out. Starting to build partnerships that can drive traffic to you digitally, such as OTAs and other third-party marketplaces, this is absolutely crucial. And yet again, China is showing us the way here. The biggest flight booking engine, Fliggy, and also Ctrip are already doing partnerships and offering the ability to sell duty-free products directly in their check-in flow. These are the kind of channels that you need to integrate into if you don't want to become more and more obsolete. Because in the end, you need to get to the point where you're shaping the customer purchasing decision. That's when you need to position yourself, and not hoping that by the time they get to your airport, they still want to buy. It is a really strong change in mindset. And similarly, we are seeing a lot of sales being driven by social media, by WeChat, by Facebook, because these are the channels that customers are on while they're traveling. So you need to be in these channels if you want to stay relevant as an airport retail operation. And again, you cannot say to your retailers, you have to do that, because the retailers can only offer their part of the retail offering, and so you cannot create a consistent messaging. So this is the responsibility of the airport to create that consistent messaging if you want to be at the forefront of these passengers' minds. And if you get into these kind of collaborations, some really incredible possibilities open up. For example, the ability to target passengers based on geo-IP very precisely while they're at the airport. I don't want to delve into it too much, but imagine a passenger arrives at an airport, walks into a store, walks out again, and then goes into the city. Facebook is now able to, for example, detect that this passenger is not actually living in that city. So they are most likely a visitor. So when the geo-IP information tells Facebook again, oh, they're going back to the airport, I can now highlight a product from that shop that they went into and maybe encourage them to either buy the product they have not bought yet, or to pay another visit to that shop, or to purchase the product directly online and just pick it up at the collection point. So these are things that no airport is even doing yet. Some are thinking about it, but they're not doing it yet because what I called the foundation for digital acquisition, customer retention, and sales is not there yet. Yeah, and there are no shortcuts to that. So that is what I mean by having to start now in order to get yourself ready for how customer engagement happens in the future or is already happening now. And of course, in the end, the main message here is we need to work on breaking the silos to think about a one platform, one experience approach, where it's no longer a complex mess of different systems, platforms, logins, payment methods, etc., but it just becomes a convenient single checkout for everything you can offer as an airport. And this is what we offer and what we bring into this industry. And we really hope that this has given you some relevant insights. I'm always keen to exchange ideas, so please add me on LinkedIn. You can simply scan the QR code you see here and directly add me and have a conversation. And very happy to get some first discussions going on how each airport, and frankly every airport, has different USPs, different needs and different issues. How this can be approached for your specific case, and how we can find a solution to come out of this together. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.